I took it to my friendly Porsche dealer and said, "Can I order one?" And they went, "No." So I thought, that's good. So actually, I made the press release by the car.
Black is not actually a colour because it doesn't reflect light.
Can I just say that that's a subject for your other podcast, Pedantry Today?
Yeah. That's getting big numbers, that podcast. Maybe just...
Can I just say that my very first driving instructor only had one arm? It was the funniest thing. He would literally change gear like this. It was brilliant.
I was thinking...
Hello and welcome to the Car Podcast with Chris Harris and his few friends. They might be my only friends. This is episode number what?
23.
23. I'm sure that was the Lotus that I raced at some point at Goodwood, and a good Lotus at that.
That was a nice one, that one.
Let's move on to this week's agenda. Adrian Hallmark, which sounds like an upmarket brand of writing paper to me, is the new CEO of Aston Martin. And he's made an announcement this week that made us all smile. He has said that manual gearboxes are a large part of the future of the brand. And we all smiled at that because we think it's great news. Thank you, Adrian. Chris Cooper, how do you feel about it?
I feel very happy about it. I think it can only be good news. There were 2019, they stopped fitting boîte de manuel to their vehicles. They've got to be good ones, though. They've got to be good ones. So they can't. There's a bit about the throw, isn't there? Bit about the throw, bit about where the clutch is and the take-up point. They've got to be quite close ratios as well. I think that's quite important.
Not 7.
We've all read, and we've all seen. Some of us have tried those Porsche manual gearboxes, which second gear takes you to 1,000,000 miles an hour. That's not great. But I think just to have that interaction, that 3-pedal interaction, brake pedal's got to be quite firm so you can heel and toe. And if you were listening last week and you know that Timberland deck shoes, the siped sole version, not the rugged off-road version, when you can roll your foot off the brake pedal and the side of the leather bit of the shoe gets a little scuffed on the throttle pedal, aka Mac Becker, then if all of those things are true, I think it's brilliant. Which engines? It'd be nice to have it with a normally aspirated engine. Just the way the engine blips and revs and the revs rise and fall. Maybe that's asking too much. But I think it's got to be
a thing now. Do they have such a thing? Do they? Do they have a normally aspirated? I don't think they do they?
No. I can't see them having one.
Apart from a Valkyrie.
Yes.
Yeah, not the most.
Any gearbox in that? Not really.
No,
I think it's good news. I mean, it was a very pleasant surprise. I had to check it. I thought it was a little sort of spoofy fake news thing, but it's not. It's for real. I think it's happy news to start the week.
Manish, do you feel strongly about manual transmissions in these cars?
So you asked the man with the 2 automatic cars, one in the garage, one at the I think automatic gearboxes are fine, but I think manual gearboxes are wonderful. And as you know, I did spend a year looking for the perfect Lola. I mean, what I would say is that my big fear about cars, I think I've shared it with you all before, is that a car becomes an app, and the closer a car is to becoming an app. So it's something that you just order, and it's just something that's functional. You get into the back of it, whether it's driven by a human or driven by a robot, and then you arrive at your destination, you carry on. I think that's the saddest possible endpoint to a car. So if Aston Martin have got the guile, the balls, the wit to turn around and say, we are going to make a beautiful, normally aspirated or otherwise ICE powered manual car, that's just got to be a good thing. That's just a great thing.
Yeah,
I agree, and I've probably shouted about the manual gearbox more than most people in my position, and I've cracked on about it to the point where people are bored or think I'm overcompensating, that I'm some sort of purist that sells the fact to help me build an image. That is, I can safely say, utter bullshit. I just really like manual gearboxes, but they have to be in cars that were designed to be manual from the first place. Now, I'll tell you why, because you can tell instinctively when a CEO like Adrian's come in and said, right, we need some manuals. if you try and put a manual into an architecture that was always designed to be automatic, then you've got a problem, because you end up with a car that is neither, here nor there. It's stuck between two places. And normally it presents itself because the footwell, you look in the footwell, and just where you sit there, actually, you think that third pedal was an afterthought. The gear lever's rarely at the right height or in the right position, because it's impossible. They have to just find a space to put the lever. And I think then it's difficult, because the CEO of the car company can go, well, you wanted a manual, we gave you a manual. Another great example, Gerhard Richter with the E60 M5, which everyone at launch went, well, why can't we have a manual? And I remember him sitting there getting increasingly inebriated in an Austrian hotel, as he said to us, look, this car would not work as a manual. It has 7 gears. The engine's entire personality, the torque curve, the power curve were designed to have 7 ratios. If you take a ratio out, it doesn't work. And also the shifting order of the gearbox means that if you had a manual gearbox, you need to shift it like a truck. First would be down in the middle, second would be up and left. It wouldn't work. So they did put a 6-speed manual in it at great cost. And I drove one in the States. It wasn't as good as the SMG. I know the SMG has its problems. So I'm cautious, really. I just think if the next generation of Aston Martins are manual, great, but they're gonna struggle to make the Vanquish that I drove a couple of weeks ago a manual.
Yeah,
because you've got a zillion foot-pound of torque to start with. You've got a heavily turbocharged engine. You haven't really got much space in the footwell for 3 pedals. It was never designed to have that. I don't know where you'd put the gear lever with all that infotainment stuff down here.
That bit doesn't work. Yeah.
So, I'd love that. I think what I'm saying is, if you're going to do a manual, it needs to be a car that was designed to be a manual. And if that's the case, then you need to go back to basics, don't you? Why not have something with a bit less power and with a little less weight, and try and create the manual gearbox in many ways is the route in to the more interactive sports car, isn't it?
Well, that's why I think it's interesting, because your question was, is this the beginning of a new era of joy? And it sort of tells us it is. It almost doesn't really matter. It does matter about the manual gearbox, but what's more important is what it says about Mr. Hallmark. Now he's got bored with that film channel that everyone watches at Christmas.
And it's
in those
Christmas
Midwestern towns. I really like those films. I thought they were great. But if he could spend some time thinking about a car company as well, I think that'd be brilliant. So I think it is a beginning of a new area of joy.
Neil Clifford, would you be more likely to buy an Aston Martin if it was manual?
100%. I think this is massive. I think this, and I'm pleased you've finally given me a chance for you lot to answer every part of this bloody question. I think that it's like VE Day. I think this is such a big day. This is the end of the war. I think this is the moment where car companies have said, actually, we can't all be like lemmings going over the cliff, because actually people don't like the cars we're making as much as they used to. And if you take out pleasure, emotion, joy, and you stick in all these things that make new cars worse, and you charge a lot more money for them, every car company in the world is going to go bust. So I think the fact that this is a sign that Mr. Hallmark, and frankly, I bet the owner, what's his bloody name?
Stroll. Lawrence.
Stroll. Sorry, Mr.
Stroll
Stroll.
and his friends.
Oh, sorry, yes. Mr. Stroll. I would like to be a non-exec on your board. Sorry for forgetting your name.
Yeah.
I think Mr. Stroll.
Learn it if you get appointed. Yeah.
Mr. Stroll, who has made all his money by understanding customers.
Yeah.
Right. He's a retailer, and I think fundamentally this is a sign of a chief executive that's got 2 ears and is listening to their customers, and wants to bring back some enjoyment about cars. Now, as Chris said, I also wrote, but it needs to be attached to a car that A, we can all afford, and B, works with the manual gearbox. And so I wrote, now he needs to go and build 125 grand DB5 6-cylinder hybrid with a manual gearbox that looks gorgeous, because Aston Martins are always gorgeous, with a ton of colours and leathers that we can buy. And they'd sell tens of thousands. Remember the Continental GT saved Bentley, right?
Yeah.
That wasn't Hallmark, was it? Even though he was at Bentley. I
No,
don't.
no.
No, that was
that was probably a German bloke.
it was a
But,
German bloke. Which one?
I think that car
Afghan.
saved Bentley, and now they could go and do the same with Aston Martin. Do DB8. There's plenty of numbers left. You know, DB69. I don't know. Just take a number
I
and
think
build
it's
a new
DB five and a
car
half.
that we can all afford. It looks gorgeous, and it's got a manual gearbox. No one needs to go 275 miles per hour. We just want to be able to, you know, a nice speed, rival a 911, but just pitch it a little bit lower in price, or even the same. Even they'd sell tens of thousands of the bloody things.
Yeah.
So I think it's brilliant. Now, are Ferrari going to listen?
That's you preempted my next question.
Oh.
Their announcement today was much more about colours. They made the national press today because Vigna has said that they are considering reducing the number of colours they offer in their specialisation scheme. You might call that tailor-made. Their sort of their PTS version. Because there's lots of well-publicised stories where they've actually they slapped cease and desist orders on influencers and people who've made their cars look too ridiculous, which to me is
That's a good thing.
It's remarkable. But once you've sold someone a car, you can't tell them what to do
No,
with it.
silly idiot. What is he talking about, this man?
But what they're saying is that they might consider to reduce. You know, they don't want tasteless Ferraris out there. To which I reply, well, why did you design the Roma then? You know, that's that you know,
Roman Spider.
I know. What's that all about? So you've got to be very careful when you start talking about taste. Everything's subjective.
Well, Porsche obviously understand their customer, right? They were, you know, what was it? It was all the catalysts around the R, wasn't it? And then the manual never died, actually, did it at all? But GT3 died, and then it came back with the R, and then it came back with manual again. I think
I can give you a humble brag about the 911 GT3. I gave them such shit. That's when I was a bit more active on the sort of interview scene. Every time there was an interview, I'd sit at the front to Preuninger and hats and say, well, where's the manual gearbox? Well, we don't need one. This car doesn't need one. Actually, the engine would have struggled with the manual then. And so they released the R. And the press release said, we'll summarise like this. It's the 911 C. Harris would have ordered, was in the press release. I was very proud of that.
I remember that.
I was very proud of that. So I took it to my friendly Porsche dealer and said, can I order one? And they went, no. So I thought, that's good. So actually, I made the press release so I could buy the car.
Who was that friendly dealer? That's interesting. That's a car that I think is ideal in either configuration. Very rare that you think, I'd love the PDK. And actually, I'd love slightly different use cases, but you'd have either and you'd love either. Very few cars like that.
You also know that the car was originally designed to be a PDK.
Yeah.
Particularly the sort of the Gen 2 991 GT3 were just, you know, my Touring's nice, but you drive the PDK, the gearbox and engine talk to each other better than the Mavics do. It was, it was designed to be that way.
But there is more pleasure. Maybe we're a bit niche. There is more pleasure driving a manual.
Well, no, there is.
I think there is, but it's an accessibility thing as well.
Yeah.
You know, I drove. What was I driving? I drove something very powerful and old, which I can't tell you what it was. But let's just say it's a real icon. You know, it might have a V12 engine, and it might, you know, have been made near Woking. That car reminds you that there's a lot to be said for the analog driving experience. There's a lot to be said for shifting gears, for not having safety electronics and all the suite of help around you. But it is high risk. You know, there's a lot of people out there. If you do that, you really do make it a very elitist activity. You know, I'm a bit torn by this. I think there should be a big spike on the steering wheel sometimes aimed at your head. But equally, you know, you want people to enjoy these things, don't you? And if you've got if you've got an automatic PDK style gearbox, for most people who can't heel and tow, it makes it a damn sight more enjoyable, doesn't it? I think you should offer both.
No, I don't think so. I've got sort of cars with both, and I don't know how to heel and tow. So which foot do you use again? You know, I'm never
Both of
sure.
them. Well, yeah.
And I get more pleasure driving at 7/10 with a manual than I do at 7/10 with PDK.
Yes. See, that's the right use case. But if you were to say, remember that time, Chris, we went to Paul Ricard to learn the circuit before we were racing there in the Blancpain thing. So we very kindly managed to find, quite by chance, a Gen 1 991 RS had been left in the car park of the hotel. Amazing coincidence. And to learn the circuit, you had to get a bit of load into it. And there was just as much enjoyment to be had from actually, particularly at senior, which is that silly, fast right-hander at the end of the straight. Where's the weight balance in the car and the weight transfer? I can't say that was anything other than a joyous day and experience, even though I wasn't three-pedaling it. Because the other joy was, how can I get the last bit of speed out of it so I can go faster than Mr. Harris?
I
and
think
not
there
lose
is
it and then
probably
didn't
more
touch.
speed. There's probably more pleasure on the limit in PDK than manual. I mean, Chris,
Let me give you an example here, and I'll tell you this is, and I do believe this is valid. I took up motorcycling just over 10 years ago. I started it late because I knew I definitely wouldn't have survived if I'd ridden a bike when I was too young. So I started late. So I'm okay on a motorcycle. I'm really not very good at all. I'm much better in a car. And I have lots of, I've had lots of fast bikes, still got some fast bikes. If they didn't have quick shifters and, the equivalent that's the equivalent of PDK, really, you could just pull the lever up without using the clutch. You don't have to rev match on the way down. If they didn't have those, I wouldn't enjoy them as much. I really wouldn't. So I think there's a real use case. Neil, I totally accept your position. I think I'd love to be a purist on a bike, but I'm not. I also think there's a lot. You are someone who's open-minded enough to go out there and go, I'll just drive at 7/10 and enjoy my manual. But if you heard and you ran a car company that load of people it was just an absolute no-go. If you only made the Revuelto as a manual and people went, well, I'm not buying it, then you'd be bollocks, wouldn't you?
I think that's true. Yeah, I get that. I get that.
Riding bikes was a real opener for me because I would love to be able to have it on the front end, blipping down with my hand, downshifting, but I would just fall off.
Yeah, I think I'm thinking about, Neil, what you said, Neil. We talked about the Mark 7 Golf, best car ever in the history of everything. The one we've got is a manual. You can't heel and tone it because the pedals are in the wrong place. The brake pedal's too soft. It just physically doesn't work. And because it's a Mark 7 Golf 1.4, you don't drive it at 10/10 everywhere. You drive it at sort of 5, 6, maybe 7/10 on a sunny, wonderful day. But the joy of making that progress smoothly and enjoyably, I think, is just wonderful. So you're right. It is. There's a definite. So I think there's an era of joy we can still enjoy because Mr. Hallmark said there's a place for manual gearboxes in our product range.
Can I have one observation? I just think when you peer into the cabin of a car, a manual gearbox lever makes a cabin look so much better.
Yes.
That's going to be one big regret about Lola. Sorry, no, it was just not seeing that beautiful double H gearbox, just seeing, as Chris calls it, the stick of doom, rather than, that beautiful. I agree, just looking at them with that gorgeous H with another little H.
I mean, all of their limited edition cars, obviously the Victor, the one-off, which was just incredible, but what's the other one? The Valor now, the Gordon Ramsay car. They're all bloody manual. You can't just make manual cars for rich people. Yeah. So I think they've learned a bit from that there's probably more demand for those cars because they're manual, because all the other sort of 2 million quid cars are not manual. So maybe they've gained a little bit of market share in hypercar and they're thinking, actually, we're onto something here.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Right, moving on. The next in our occasional discussions around colours on cars. This week, black.
Johnny.
Darth Vader, black as you like. Black is, for me, the most divisive colour on any car. And Neil Clifford is going to explain why. Well, I go and get myself, and you'll love this, and I left this in there earlier, an ice cool can of Coke from the fridge that I'm going to drink from a cold glass.
Nice. Well, we all know it's a very dark colour. It's almost black. Black.
Johnny.
Johnny, I think it's time to go home, Johnny. I think it is. It's a tricky color, black, and I'm not a big lover of black cars, particularly metallic. I'm okay with solid black, but it is a color that sometimes I end up owning one. I'm like, why the hell do I own that? I mean, it gets dirty too quickly, particularly if it's got black wheels. I mean, the black wheel debate is that's another whole hour, isn't it?
Isn't that verboten? Black car and black wheels.
Well, I've done it. I've done it a couple of times, and the minute
Have
the
you?
car turns, I was a bit, I don't know, 2016 or something in a 991 Targa, and I'm like, oh, what did I do that for? Black with
Yeah,
black.
what did you do that?
Yeah, exactly. And I drove it about 500 miles. I don't really like.
Spanish could have it.
Is black a color? I suppose it obviously is a color, but I think I struggle with black cars. I think what I ask myself is what black cars do I like? And the one that I came up with is a Mark One Golf GTI
Yes.
with the Pirelli wheels.
Campaign model.
Campaign. I think that's a cool black car.
That is true.
It's a good black. And some of those sort of early 90s Japanese things like the Celica GT4 and that, I think they look quite good in black. So I'm not a Mondial. I've got a very good friend, Sebastian, who lives in LA with a 3.4 Mondial Quattroval thing, black. That's quite chic. The Ferrari non-metallic black's quite good. But I think it's a color that I struggle with, unfortunately.
Manish, loaded question, given that your dear Lola is indeed black.
And you're
How do you feel about that colour?
It is actually my favorite color for a car.
Good.
That's it. It really is. My Audi A4 Avant is also metallic black. So not only is it black, it's got some metal in it. Lola is Nero Daytona. So she has some metal in it. But I was just thinking back, the first black car that I saw that I absolutely fell in love with was that mid-80s Porsche Turbo that was in all the Braun adverts. And do you remember it looked like the Braun shaver? It would drive. I mean, it just looks stunning. You've got this thing, it just looks like a Beetle. But a Countach in black, unbelievably beautiful. The 288 GTO in black, unbelievably beautiful.
I stupidly sold a black Countach.
What?
5,000. Yeah, what a mug.
What?
There's such a story with that car, and it involves Harvey, and I'm gonna shame him at some point. The famous Harvey. But anyway, a 5,000 Quattroval. It was the car actually owned by the Athena poster guy. It was his car. What a mug.
No. Oh,
Black.
Wow.
Anyway.
Neil Clifford, black cars, yes or no?
Well, I thought I've answered the question, actually.
well, you have.
But I would
you have.
like to add that I did own a Lamborghini Countach Quattroval, and I stupidly sold it black. But apart from that, and probably if it would have been green or something, I would have never sold it. But look, I think colour's a wonderful thing because it brings out everyone's emotion, doesn't it, differently?
Chris Cooper.
I'm really torn on this. First of all, black's not a colour, technically, because it doesn't actually reflect light. I think I'm probably get 1,000 people telling me that's incorrect, but I'm sure in my physics failed A-level, black is not actually a colour because it doesn't reflect light.
Can I just say that that's a subject for your other podcast, Pedantry Today?
Yeah. That's getting big numbers, that podcast. Maybe it's just me listening to it all the time. So, and black isn't what it used to be. Black is not as black as it used to be, or is more black. Land Rover dealers, these are not available to everybody because they're expensive vehicles. But you drive past a Land Rover dealer these days, you think you've driven past a new corporate entrant to the undertaking business.
Yes.
It's such a big shed with lots of big black wagons outside. And I've done a little bit of experimenting today. So I've got some boards. So this is from the configurator of Land Rover. It's a base model Defender. There's one standard color, white. That's the only color you can have, the standard. and then there's a light greeny, not a bad blue, but then there's smudge, and then there's black, and then there's more black. Blackety black, Johnny. There's no bloody colours. Octa, the super duper new one they're going to make into a Dakar racer next year. Guess how many colours you can have with that?
Oh my God, 2.
2. And you have to have a black roof. You can't have a body-coloured roof. Land Rover, it's tempting to say it's Jerry trying to undermine and challenge the world's view of what a Land Rover is. You can't get a Land Rover, can't get a Defender in a green, like an Aintree green or a Goodwood, or whatever the other Range Rover greens are. So it's the black bit with Land Rover. It's just too much. Black with black with black. Triple black is too much. Mr. Clifford, you have your hand up.
May I just say something, sir?
Yes, please go ahead, Mr. Clifford.
Someone, not me, obviously, on the comments gave an answer to this thing about Land Rover.
Share it with the class, please.
And they said the reason why all car manufacturers are narrowing down colours as low as possible is because obviously no one really goes in and writes a check for a car anymore. You go in and it's 10 grand down and it's $599 a month. And all manufacturers are desperately shit scared of getting back the lime green one, which is then going to be worth less.
Yes.
So they've narrowed down the colour to minimise depreciation, which I think is incorrect because I think great cars are actually worth more in great colour. Yeah. But that I was told by someone in the industry that's why that has been
that's
done.
an interesting thing. You could price it accordingly. I mean, good retailers would price that accordingly to say, I don't like that you can have a green one, but I need to price it accordingly. So having said all that, because I think big cars in particular just don't suit black. It's just too much black. I have had 2 black cars. They were both 6 Series convertibles. And actually, I quite like them. It's the only black car I've ever had, and I had 2 of them, just to make sure. So even though I don't
like roof as well, Chris.
Yeah, I think having the red roof. You can see some. This is an interesting phenomenon. Colours of soft top roofs.
That's another topic entirely.
We need to come back to that some other time. So, black isn't the colour, and I do bemoan the fact that everywhere you go, it just looks like every car dealership's become a corporate undertaking business of enormous scale. And Land Rover, I mean, come on, sort yourselves out. 2 colours?
Yes.
Come on.
Yeah.
So, but I have had black cars, and when they were clean, God, they were nice.
They've got to be
6
clean.
Series convertible, granted, but they were nice.
So, black cars. Some observations. I've had a couple of new black cars in my life. I wouldn't have another one unless you could offer me a new 288 GTO with standard Daytona seat with a red insert in a black seat.
Yeah, that's winning.
There's no clue here. So the reason why a lot of 80s sport models look so good in black, I think, is because they had lots of really sort of cool, aggressive wheel arch extensions or plastic stuff on the bumpers, where there would always be some sort of colour insert that would set off the black. You know, a Peugeot 205 GTI, I think, looks best in flat black, actually. When it's really clean, they did a solid black, but because it had that red stripe that ran through the plastic wheel arch extensions, it really sent the black off. I think a black 911 Turbo G-Series is a great-looking car, but you need red piping on the seats just to bring it out a bit. So I'm not a massive fan, but I always remember a story. I think it was in Car Magazine or Autocar. I tried to research it earlier, but I couldn't find it. I think the guy that designed the original Elise was Julian Thompson, wasn't it?
Yes.
And I seem to remember an article where he was quoted. Someone said, "This is a great looking car. What colour would you have it in?" And he said, "The best colour for the Series 1 Elise is black because you see the shapes better."
See,
and I have seen one in black, and he's quite right.
How do you see the shapes better in black?
It's true. It's true. It's absolutely true. If you want to see black car, you will see every shape.
Some black cars, and I think you need a flat black to give you the real to help you see the shape. But there are some cars that is really true.
Yes.
So I'm a bit torn.
Doesn't black lose? So, Manish, if you weren't wearing a black sort of, sweater thing, say a lighter color, everyone could see what we know you have, which are rippling biceps, and you've got, extreme vascularity around the shoulder area, and your pecs are, honestly, I quite like them. But with the black, it's all lost.
I know you're lost in your own little humorous monologue there, but you're failing to acknowledge one fact. You're seeing a recording of Manish through a camera. Cameras hate black. So I'll say one other rule. Any press office or marketing department that delivers a car that's black needs shooting or black wheels. You can't do anything with it. All you do is leave it to the person in post-production to go, great, thanks. Now I've got a long day, a long night ahead of me to make this thing look three-dimensional. So I can think of so many great black cars. Also, when Mercedes Formula One car went from silver to black, it looked better to me. I don't know about you. It looked meaner, faster.
That's interesting.
I know it's all very personal. The black Countach that Neil owned should never have been sold. A black Countach is a magnificent-looking thing. I agree. And I think Ferraris are weird because Rosso Corso, which still accounts, by the way, for 40% of Ferrari orders. I think most Ferraris look better in black. 355 looks better in black. 360 looks better in black. 430 looks better in black. What after that?
Looks good.
Black is a great Ferrari colour, actually.
Yeah,
apart from when you've got Fabio inside, which then you go, well, it looks like someone's just let their fire extinguisher off inside it, doesn't it?
612 in black.
Yeah, it's good.
With the 599 wheels. These bigger wheels. The more black, the bigger the wheel has to be to balance it.
Silver.
Really?
That's a thing I've just invented.
We've just done.
That's a correct thing.
If we're running through the colours, we've just completed black. Please add to the comments if you think we're full of the proverbial. Moving on. It is our equation time. This week, we've moved on to £17,000. And I'm starting. No, I've just been talking. So there's it. Hold the equation up. 17. Christ, we're up to 23 next week. Manish can go first on this one. £17,000.
Well, look, we're getting well out of shed here, but I've got to tell you, I think this is going to take a bit of beating. £16,500, 46,455 miles. It's a private sale, so it's not from that dodgy website, ..hub. And how can you buy a Bentley Continental GT?
Oh, yes.
With 40-odd thousand miles for 16,000, but this is a V12 as well.
Yeah, W12.
Come on.
Yeah,
do not buy a new car. That is the message of this. Just don't buy a new car.
Does that come with a warranty, that car, Manish?
I don't know, but it's not a D or an A. There's nothing nasty about it. I think that's great.
It's good.
It's
good.
I love the optimism. It's great. It is great.
No, it's good. One previous owner, Wurzel Gummidge.
I think
exactly.
I'm just Googling something so I can counter Manish's choice, but here we go. So I think we're right in the territory now where we can be absolute reckless dreamers, which is this is what the classifieds is all about. You need to be buying shit that's ruinous. Even if you go onto eBay for a cheap deal, two headlight units are £3,800.
Yeah.
I researched a story for Autocar on these when they were about 5 years old. Used car bargain, said the used car editor. I went, let's get some parts prices, shall we? Absolutely ruinous. You could hit a curb and a sparrow at 12 miles an hour and technically write it off, I think.
Yeah.
But I tell you what a W12 engine. This is one of the last Piech cars.
Yeah.
Just so ambitious. The car that saved Bentley. There's a real robust charm to the way they look as well. Yeah. They sound magnificent. There's a purr and a rumble together with that engine. When they come past you, they're very, very distinctive. So Manish, I love the dreaming. This is all about the dreaming. Chris Cooper, are you dreaming?
So I am dreaming. It may be partly nightmarish. But Neil, last week, you were slightly concerned about my approach to this particular topic. What did you think? You thought I was? What was the word you used?
Well, you just didn't. You ignored the budget.
I was cheating.
Yes.
So I think you've already said. This week I've uncheated because my car this week is £14,995.
Ooh.
So I think in the balance sheet of cheatingness, I'm now sort of back to a bit of headroom. It's a TVR Chimera 4 litre.
Oh,
I love it.
The two reasons for that. One is we used to have one of these. It's still, if I brought any car home and it was a TVR, Lynn would be very, very happy if I brought another, particularly green, which this one is, in a tan inside. We had Curitan green with a biscuit. Isn't that a great name for an inside of a car?
It's
Biscuit.
a lovely name.
Biscuit interior. The
Yeah.
other reason why this is really great because it's on sale at the esteemed second-hand car emporium, Sevens and Classics, which, Chris, as you know, is run by our acquaintance and chum Andy Noble, who used to be Mr. Caterer
oh, yeah.
all these years ago. So Mr. Noble, who now runs Sevens and Classics down at Brands Hatch, just on the back entrance to the paddock. Those of you know that wonderful circuit in Kentshire in England to Leicestershire. So I think I'm now back in credit. It's a TVR Chimera.
That's
I
good.
don't think it's had all the things done that Chimeras need. Andy can correct us in the comments. But it's 2,000 under budget. It's a green TVR Chimera 400. If that isn't a dream, I don't know what is.
Oh, do you know what? We've started strongly here. Neil, don't let me down.
Right. Well, I don't know. I'll find the photograph in a minute. I have found, you guys have all gone a bit too boring. I have found a Peugeot 504 Cabriolet,
Oh,
right,
Ooh.
in green, original green, 32,000 miles, just in a village outside of Lille.
Is that on Le Bon Coin?
One owner. It's only ever driven to Paris. Full history at the local dealer. I mean, you're not going to fucking buy that? It'll break down. But I thought it was a good car anyway.
It probably won't break down.
The answer is obviously a 996 911.
Oh.
If you want to actually have a car to enjoy, you go and buy a 996. And this lovely one at our friends at Heel and Toe, lovely mid-grey Targa, sports exhaust from factory, sports seats, 16995, 75,000 miles, full history. Everything works. So I checked. I messaged Christian. I said, I want to talk about your car. Is it all bloody working? And he says, it's bang on. It's a better car than the 993.
Yes.
It's a better car than the 964. The driving position's better. It's a lot faster. You get a Carrera 2. It's super, super light. And you can get these cars for 15, 16 grand. I mean,
is the roof jammed open or jammed shut?
no, it all works. It all works. So
Brilliant.
I think if you're actually going to spend your own money of 17 grand and you want a car for the weekend and that can do 170 miles an hour if you're going to Germany to buy some sausages, it's the car in my view.
Yeah. That's a Gen 2 996, isn't it?
That's a Gen 2 actually. Yeah. It's a Gen 2, yeah.
I think that's a smart car.
Yeah.
I still have my TVR, but I think that's a very good option for our canon of shedness.
I've just lost the car I found for sale on the website, so I've done really well here. But I did it the right way because I decided to re-engage with the classifieds the way I always have done. I just, rather than search for anything, I just started scrolling. I went to the homepage, to the Lucky Dip. I used a car and classic. I used to miss that. When I started using it on a mobile device, I missed the ticker at the top where there'd just be random shit would come across. Yeah. Like a sort of Wall Street, share price of doom would come across and be like, oh, Jesus Christ, look at that bastard. Anyhow, I found a car I didn't know existed. And I'll post it up in a minute and I'll show you a picture of it. It's a Mercedes 190E. I think it was a 2.316 valve. It's £15,000 below budget. And I was reading the description and I laughed and went, oh, these idiots. They've been found out here. They've made a fake one. Because it says it's got an automatic gearbox.
Yeah.
No, they did have autos.
They did have
I had no idea. You both knew. I had
most of them are automatics, frustratingly.
Yeah. Well, I thought, I've never seen them. They've all got manuals, the ones I look at. So I found the auto. I just thought that is a really weird car.
That's a cool car.
Yeah.
But
you'd rather have a manual one, probably, but...
Of course you would. Well, the manual gearbox is
dog leg.
Anyway. But it's terrible. So for me, an automatic 190E I think it was 2.3 or was it 2.5?
No,
I'll find the advert for you.
Is it check cloth seats or leather?
No, it's just got cloth check inserts. You
Yeah.
can pretend it's silver, so you can pretend that you were in
Oh,
that.
that's
Way.
nice.
Yeah.
It's a sort of car that who was that private detective that lived in Jersey at a Reliant scimitar?
Bergerac.
Yeah, he had a Triumph TR2.
Didn't he
Yeah,
have
the
something wrong with
TR2.
his arm or something? He had one of those balls on the steering wheel. It's one of
What?
those sort of cars, isn't it? I'm sure there was
What are you
some sort of.
talking about?
I'm sure he had
From
some.
Jersey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone just say yes.
So can someone go back through their sleuthing history files to find a one-armed detective that lived on Jersey and drove a 190 2.360? Also, we're stopping the podcast now. I'm assuming this person didn't exist. What would he or she be called? Now, Manish, go on the spot.
Monsieur Aubergine.
Chris, good.
I'm sure there was something funny about the fact that he had to have an automatic. That's all I was thinking about.
Oh, really?
Yes. No, I think. Well, anyway, that car, which, to be honest, when I always look for those cars, they seem like they're all automatic. The 2.3.
It's amazing how different he sees things. I always thought they were manuals. By the way, the sleuth would be called Beadle because he's got.
Can I just say that my very first driving instructor only had one arm? It was the funniest thing. He would literally change gear like this. It was brilliant.
I mean, I was looking at a 993 cab, which is obviously I'm talking totally against myself. Tiptronic, thinking, well, maybe it's not as crap as it really is made out. Maybe it's a city, but maybe it is quite crap, isn't it?
It's crap.
Yeah. Oh, honestly, getting one now. They are shit boxes.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, terrible. The only Tiptronic's got to be a PDK. Okay, so we've who else we've all done PDK shares. Well done, everyone. Tick next to that, Chris. Car you have. Oh no, we're going to go for
Tariffs.
Now, if we had some music from the editor, we'd now go to serious music, and we might even move to that very low voice, the guy that introduces the films when you're in the cinema. Tariffs are coming. This could have been an emergency podcast. On a serious note, this is an apolitical podcast, but the new leader of the United States is announcing tariffs, and I think we all agree it could have quite serious impact on European car manufacturers. And because you've all got much bigger brains than me, I'd love each of you just to tell me what you think might be the fallout from tariffs on European cars into America, starting with Neil Clifford.
Well, it will probably mean that we get American cars in Europe in the end, because that's probably what he wants to achieve. I mean, I use my Chat GDP thing, or whatever it's called, and I put in here, because I didn't know, I wrote, are there tariffs on European cars going into America? And you do that, and it gives you the answer in 3 seconds. Yes. The US imposes tariffs on European cars at 2.5%. So I'm like, okay, 2.5%. Are there tariffs on American cars coming into Europe? So you do that, and it comes up, and it tells you that there are, come on, little Chat GBT. Yes, the European Union imposes tariffs on American cars. The standard tariff for passenger cars is 10%. So at the moment, Europe has got the tariffs on America.
Good deal.
So I think we need to be very careful by blaming Mr. Trump. And I'm not saying I'm a fan of him, yes or no, but the tariffs at the moment are the other way around. We're stopping American cars coming to Europe.
Can I just add one thing before I ask Mr. Cooper for his learned observations on this? It's all you could say it's about opening a negotiation, and there's always an ulterior motive. That seems to be the way, but regardless of whether this means that America negotiates a way of selling more cars in Europe, most of the cars it makes don't fit our roads. So, you look at a lot of the stuff they sell, the really popular stuff, big SUVs, Suburbans, all this stuff that F-150s, we love all these cars. Don't get me wrong. When I'm over there, I love driving around a Suburban. You try driving a Suburban in the UK, Defender looks like a chimney next to one of those. So actually, and the one car company that sells European-sized cars is the electric one, and they seem to be selling as many as they can over here already. And they're more threatened by Chinese EV sales than anything in Europe. So I think it's interesting. You can say a rebalancing of the books, but they don't sell a product that even fits in our roads,
Oh
really.
no, I agree with you in 90% of that. But how much would we all love to buy Ford Broncos for 30 grand?
Oh, I think we would, but again, even the little one's massive over here.
Yeah.
Oh, it's cool though. I'd have one. It's
Oh,
brilliant.
that's a great looking thing.
Yeah.
Chris Cooper, what do you think?
So this is a big geopolitical issue. So I've got a big map.
Go on. Right.
Big map of the world.
What does that say for the benefit of listeners? What does that say there?
So this is a map of the world.
Yeah.
Obviously, with us and the car podcast in the centre of it.
Yep.
As it should be.
Yep.
So the problem is that the people over here.
He's pointing to America.
The people over here think that they take more of the goods for people over here and people over here.
He just pointed at Europe and Asia.
Yeah,
China, really.
I've got a chart to show you which sort of brings this into relief. So this is a chart here. We'll put these on some pictures here. This is a chart here. So the red.
There are a lot. Sorry, Chris. There are lots of people that listen to this on podcast, and I took a bit of grief this week that we do too many visual things. So I'm going to talk through it as you hold it up.
Okay, so I can give you the summary of it for those listening in black and white. So this is a chart which has got at the top of it is all the people who are basically net exporters.
Yeah.
And the bottom is people who are net importers.
Yeah.
The very, very, very big red line here. The bigger, the better. Have a guess who that is. That's the United States. And at the top, in terms of net exporters, are China, Germany, Russia, da-da-da-da-da-da. The interesting thing, which is maybe why Sir Starmer has been able to keep his head down this week, this is another version of that chart, which says that the UK there is actually a net importer from the US, where most of the EU is a net exporter. So this is because the Americans think they're getting a raw deal from imports and exports. What's going to happen? It's going to be messy because car makers are looking already now at the cars they're going to sell in 6-7 years' time. Trump will be, whatever, we won't go into politics, but whoever's president of the US now won't be president in 4 years' time. Whatever their views, they might change. Car companies can't deal with that. They've already committed to building lots of EVs, fewer internal combustion engine vehicles. So the biggest problem, and everybody in business always says this, but in this case, it really is true. The one thing that people running businesses want is stability. They don't mean benign conditions. They like that. But as long as they know what's going to happen, you can plan and run a business in good times or bad. If you've got stability, you can do it. This throws everything up in the air. We've seen that tariffs have been put on and then we've been delayed, blah, blah, blah. So for the car industry, you'd think if there was a long-term trend here, then one of the impacts is going to be more European car makers are going to start opening factories in the US. Mm-hmm. And the European car makers who have opened factories in Mexico and Canada and elsewhere will say, I'm going to move those car factories out of Canada and Mexico into the United States of America itself. In fact, I saw a quote from somebody today saying that the Canadian-US Auto Parts Association, I didn't know such a thing, but I'm sure they're wonderful people, are saying 25% tariffs, we ain't got an industry anymore. It might not happen, but they've already committed to that. So the bottom line of this right now, in an environment where we've already talked about subsidies of Chinese EVs and the tensions between a government and regulatory push to the consumer to buy more EVs and how that's struggling. Now we've thrown this curveball in. It ain't very happy for a car maker. It's right now, it's hard to imagine a messier picture. In the short, is there any upside for us? I mean, it will probably sort itself out. My crystal ball would be, it probably won't be this bad. It probably will sort itself out. And actually, the ability of any politician anywhere to really affect this is limited because in 3 or 4 years' time, there'll be change and somebody will change it. And car makers are dealing in longer timescales, blah, blah, blah. So
they don't really make right-hand drive cars anyway, do they? I mean, we're a little bit isolated.
Yeah, so Germany, BMW factories in the United States, Spartanburg, where they first started making the X5 20 odd years ago, 25 years ago, 30+% of that manufacturing output goes to Europe. So an awful lot of BMWs are already built in the US, sold in the US, tariff free. The irony would be if there's a trade war, then suddenly some BMWs that are made in the US going to Europe will cost more. It's very messy and complex. It's not just as simple as there are factories over here in America and factories over here in China literally firing missiles of product at each other. It's much messier than that.
I didn't know that there were tariffs on American cars into EU already, right? I
Yeah.
found that through my new app.
Manish, you've been sitting there patiently and quietly. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, again, this is not my area of expertise, so I did a bit of reading, and there were two things that really struck me. And the first one was, actually, I think it was the Canadian ambassador to the UK had talked about their relationship with the United States, and ultimately this is to do with cars. He said that although we have a kind of net export surplus, a lot of it is stuff for their supply chains. So they're not really exporting anything at all. And the second point about cars between America and Canada and between America and Mexico is that actually they bounce across the border at least half a dozen times, often 10 times, to create a car. So it's not as if, I mean, I think the picture's being painted that people are building these cars in Mexico and building these cars in Canada, and they're just basically wheeling these cars into America to sell them. It's not really as simple as that. And I think my biggest anxiety about this, I think Chris has got the grown-up answer, which is ultimately this is about business predictability. And when you're putting billions and billions in a year and have to look into a crystal ball and be accurate, that's a big thing. But I think my fear is that it feels a little bit like in Europe, many of our car manufacturers are on life support already. We're not, they're sitting there thinking, well, we don't really know what to do now. Do we go EV? Do we continue with ICEs? What do we do with hybrids? There's so much uncertainty. Yeah. Very few people are making tons and tons and tons of money. I was most shocked, actually, when I looked at, how Tesla's priced compared to its turnover, compared to a really mature company like Mercedes. And I think, wasn't it you, Neil, who pointed out the real issue, or it was my friend Max, the issue is, Mercedes got a massive pension fund they've got to fund because it's a 100-year-old company with 100-year-old employees. Tesla, it's got 20 employees and they're all 30 years old. They don't get a pension. And that's why Tesla's priced at 10 times its turnover and Mercedes at 0.66 times its turnover. So if we're already really struggling as a kind of car-making continent, and I'm just speaking about Europe now, not about China, I'm not Chinese, the idea of having a 25% tariff on your product when it's struggling to be competitive in a foreign market, it's absolutely that. Isn't that just the death knell for us in America? And that's terrifying.
He hasn't declared the percentage, has he? He hasn't.
No, but if he's broadly saying, and also my understanding is that there may be a differential for example, from China, between Chinese cars coming over and Teslas. Teslas might be given a kind of special case and a slightly lower tariff. So it all looks highly subjective, but I think we should take this stuff seriously. Just because, everything's been put back a month, it doesn't mean it won't arrive next month.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it's interesting, and you've all answered it in much more detail and a more intelligent way than perhaps I would. But I think if I was running a car company, if I was running Stellantis, I'd be thinking we're in the shit anyway. But if I was running an Audi or a BMW or a Porsche, I'd be thinking we've got some pressures here that are mainly unfair. I think, our representatives in the European Union haven't helped us. They've given us a very difficult job to try and compete with China on the EV front. But the one thing we've got in our back pocket is our golden goose. And I'm sure every retailer's got their golden goose. For Porsche, it's probably, a high margin SUV, like a Cayenne Turbo with all the kit on it, sold out of a Californian dealership. Orange County can sell as many of those as they can make. Neil Clifford, I bet you, because he's a clever bugger, he knows what his come rain or shine shoes are, what his handbag is. That's a banker, that one. Whatever happens, we can sell those because people love those. And I just think the sad thing is that the these car makers must have been thinking, we're all right. We've still got that in our back pocket. We've got the high value American sales. And if these tariffs went ahead, I think it's going to hit them at a time when it'd be so difficult to recover. Because if Mercedes, if you suddenly have to add 25% or whatever it is onto the price of a G63, that's another argument. Is there enough money in California to say, well, stuff it, we'll still, I don't matter if they go up to $400,000, we'll still buy them. There comes a point where people go, enough, don't they?
Yeah.
Not the G-Wagon.
Yes.
Not maybe not.
No, they put it up 50 grand. They still got 3-year waiting list, haven't they?
Yeah, I know. It's an amazing country, but it just makes you think. You've got this. If you're running a business, you've got these banker products. Don't worry about those. Come rain or shine. If that gets whipped away from you, it's like, oh Jesus Christ, that's a bit of a worry. Okay, next question. This is good. Car you have never seen before. Talking about in the flesh, but you really, and this is a crucial verb. Need to, not want to, but you need to see it in the flesh. So I'm going to start with Neil Clifford.
Right, this all comes from me from Top Trumps, and
Yeah.
I've seen most cars in Top Trumps, but there's a couple. I'll talk about the one really. The one that I haven't seen is the Monteverde High
I knew you were going to say that.
450 SS.
SS, 450
Okay.
horsepower.
I don't even know actually whether this car really exists. I think it probably does. There's probably like 3 of them. But unless you came up against the Daytona or something with V12 and you were on the other side of the game and you weren't calling the shots, you could almost guarantee that this was a winner because it's 6,980 cc's, 450 horsepower.
Yeah.
V8, you can sometimes
It's the
take
horsepower was the killer.
It was the horsepower and 290 kilometers per hour. I've never, and I've been around a bit, and I'm quite old, and I spend a lot of time looking for cars. I've never seen one of those, and I would love to see one before I die. So if anyone owns one, please send me a direct message.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Chris Cooper.
So this week on social media, there seems to be one car that's literally following me around wherever I go. It's this 40th anniversary Land Cruiser FJ73. I mean, look at that.
Yeah.
It's just, I can't find out much about it other than it might actually be a one of one. But it's achingly cool. It's got white wheels. It's a bit, ironically, looks a bit like a Land Rover Defender County lookalike color scheme on it. White steel wheels, white roof, that sort of bluish mid-blue that Defender's in at the moment. But it's just
Lovely.
achingly lovely and cool. I think it's got a 4-litre V6 in it, petrol, I presume. I mean, next week it'll be a different answer, but this week, I suggested on Idle Chat, it might be a new little conversation topic we have. Coolest guy in the parking lot this week. That is the coolest thing in the parking lot this week on social media. I really want to see that. I need to see that.
Manish.
I think this is a one of one. It's I saw photos of it. It was originally owned by the Shah of Iran. Then I think Nicolas Cage had it for a while. Then someone else sold it. It's been at motor shows, and I've always bloody missed it when it's been there. There are videos of it. There are photos of it, and it is his Lamborghini Jota.
Yeah.
It's the Mura that he had done up. It's a sort of purple color.
Yeah.
It's absolutely the most beautiful car ever built. And you know the headlights, instead of the eyes, it has the kind of perspex. In case kind of I've never seen anything like it. And I need to see that before I die. I really do, in the flesh.
It's a difficult one to know here, isn't it? I think there are underground bunkers at car makers where they've made cars that they intended to sell, or do they want to just get us juiced up at motor shows? And of all the car makers, they've all got one of these bunkers. But I think the best Frankenstein outlet might be BMWs, because we've seen all the pictures of the E46 M3 Touring. We've seen the E39 M5 Touring. These were all cars that were built and were TÜV approved as well. There's a 740i E38 there that is full road legal with TÜV approval with an E39 M5 engine. That was made for Richter, special one-off. So I love all of those. So for me, it would be the BMW Bunker. And you might remember they made one car, I think it was red, and it was a real M8. So it was an 8 Series. It was a real, they had the 850 CSI, but they made a real M8, which
Yes,
had
that's
the
right.
bulb on throttle bodies, the special mirrors, and it just looked ready to go for production. And there is one. And I would love, I'd like to just casually rock up to Cars and Coffee in amongst all the people with their M cars and just turn up with the dad. That's the daddy M car, isn't it? The one they never
Yeah.
made.
Yeah.
So for me,
Good one.
I think the M8 would be for me. Now, moving on to our 2-car garage, which was, I'll say the writer of this was anonymous, but he hides behind the name Manish.
Yeah.
So here we go. It is 1977, and you're a mild-mannered GP living in a pretty country village, he says, rubbing the top of his Farah trousers, his thighs. You have a cottage, a lovely wife, 2 children at the local school, and Labrador. But you and your wife have a little secret. You're swingers. You go to swinging parties and drop your keys into a small wicker basket and take a little potluck. So you need something sensible and something racy. What 2 cars do you choose? I don't even know where to start with this, but I'll tell you what, Manish, you can begin.
I think this really did come from the fact that the lovely guy who played George Roper and George and Mildred died. And I was just thinking back to all of those sort of slightly racy. There was always so much innuendo in the 70s, even in the most family shows, wasn't there?
Yeah.
And I just love the idea that, you go to a swingers party, you take a key out, and you basically end up with Eutha Joyce. Or who was the lady in Rising Damp? Frances de la Tour played, what was her name?
I can't remember.
God, she was also just so sextile. I love the idea of that.
Mrs.
Anyway,
Rigby?
my father was a bit of a mild-mannered GP, and oddly, his choice in cars I thought was never that great, but his partner had a fantastic Volvo 240 DL, which I think is just such a sensible...
Forslander, yeah.
They're great.
I mean, that's just a country GP's car. It just did everything. I thought the suspension was a bit... I never liked being in the back because I always felt a bit car sick. So I was a little bit like that, but you could get anything into it. Then I thought, if you're really a swinging 70s GP, I think you would be Leslie Phillips, wouldn't you? You would be Doctor in the House. You would be sort of ring-a-ding-ding. And I think you would have something racy in the 70s. And I think there's only one car. It has to be just about affordable, just about. And I think it would be this. I think it would be a Lotus Elite.
A Lotus
And
Elite?
Wow. I think you turn up in that Perspex, was it fiberglass reinforced plastic, wasn't it? That was the body.
Yeah.
2-litre engine. You turn up in that, you'd have your little Lotus keyring. Into the wicker basket it goes. You'd pull it out and, gosh, God knows who. But
you might have to do the deed on the driveway of the house you were having a party in there, because I'm not sure it would necessarily always start.
Really?
Right, we've already gone too far with this, Cooper. That's an official.
I didn't start this subject.
Do the deed, for God's sake. Right, Neil.
What is the deed?
Neil, clean this up for me.
Well, look, I've gone back to my top trumps from the 70s because I didn't really know what happened in swingers parties. In all honesty. So I just thought, there's no budget. Manish gave us no budget here. So racy and practical, what are the 2 cars that I would choose from the 70s? They would be the Mercedes-Benz 450 SEL 6.9. If you want to get up to no good, there's plenty of room in there. I suppose you go for wiped down leather as opposed to the cloth. But I think the 450 6.9. And then for racy, frankly, if you pull out the wrong keys, you just want to get out of the house as quickly as possible on your own, you go for me, that was the car of the 70s. Ooh. The Boxer. I think that profile, to me, it beats the Countach. I know it's a bit of a sort of controversial thing to say, but that the Pininfarina pen on that car There's not a shit line in it, and it actually in blue is very nice. So that as a 2-car garage in the 70s, you don't need to go to swingers parties, do you? Really, you can sort of fall in love with yourself.
Can you do me a favour? Can you turn those cards around so we can see the back of them to remember our childhood? Just see the back of them.
Look at that!
Oh,
Oh,
look at those
that. No, I know
top
you can't all see that, but it's the blue and white dots, and the white dots have got the outline.
It's quite psychedelic, isn't it? It's a bit sort of early 70s, that, isn't it? Yeah.
That's a look at the go home. If you can't see this, you're listening to it. Go home and look at the back of a Top Trumps original Top Trumps card.
The woman you end up going home with would be wearing a very long dress in exactly that material.
I don't think you understand how swinging works. You don't go home with them, Manish. Right.
No.
Chris Cooper, what 2 cars are you going to have?
I think you've got it all wrong, you guys. 1970s Britain wasn't like that. 1970s suburbia, in particular, wasn't like that. I can vaguely remember in the 1970s, and my parents having drinks parties,
Yes,
not basket and car keys, having drinks parties, and it was very much Advocar and sherry and rum barber. It was all, and that was exotic. It was 1977 was not Britain at its great.
How do you explain the special spare bedroom with all the plastic sheets then?
That we didn't have one of those. That's not what suburbia was like. I lived in the countryside in Kent, and it wasn't like that. So I think it would be a much more of a British Leyland at its worst moment.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Okay.
So I think the racy car wasn't actually that racy at all. But if you were, I imagine, at one of these swingers parties, you might try to sell this. You might drape the keys over your forearm, sort of look what I've got for you. But actually, what I've got for you would be an MGB GT.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. They're still quite caddish though. So I think
Well, I'm glad you said that because I think the other car would be slightly caddish.
Is it
But
plastic bumper?
it would be a weak effort at caddishness. It would be a Series 2 Jaguar XJ.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it would be the it wouldn't be the 4.2.
2.8.
It wouldn't even be the 3.4.
Yeah.
He's right. It would be the 2.8.
Yes.
Which only lasted 2 years.
Yeah, 2.8.
It was replaced by the 3.4. So I think you'd have a slightly disappointing, it's not really where we were in the 60s. 80s are still on another planet. I think 1977, a swingers party, you'd leave with a slightly.
I think that's true.
This has hit a nerve for me because both of my parents, my English parents, had they weren't swingers. I know them; they really weren't swingers. But I've looked at the cars they had in 1977, and I'm now concerned that they might have fitted the mould. So I'm going to take the 2 cars they had in 1977. Neither of them were GPs, and they didn't live anywhere near. Was it Norfolk? You said or something. So my mother had what was quite an exotic, rare car, but it was an Audi 80 Estate, which was a rebodied Passat. Actually, I'll hold a picture of it up now. It's an interesting car because it was a rebodied Passat.
Yes.
So actually, it was the beginning of that Audi styling language. You can see the shape of the light. That's where it all began. That's where it began. Where they take a VW and make it look like an Audi.
And did they call it Audi?
No, they called it Audi.
Okay.
And the other car that they had, that was their practical car. The other car they had was a bright yellow E21 323i.
Oh, that's good.
Which is looking back, is a bit swinger, isn't it? I mean,
I don't think it is. I think there's cool cars.
It was
bright yellow, though. You want to be out in the field.
Imagine turning up, hey, look at me, lobbing the keys in the pot. Anyhow.
I think there's a lifestyle in there we'll talk about another occasion.
Yes. So I'm partly proud of them that maybe they were more adventurous than I ever thought. Luckily, they've been gone for a long, long time, so they can't sue me for saying this. Sorry.
We'll never know.
But yeah, dearie God, don't Don't go back through your parents' car ownership and make any judgments about them, because I've just done it for the last 20 minutes and you sit there thinking,
Hold on, remember, it was my dad, the GP, who had the Capri that had that registration plate GAY777L.
Yeah, see,
And we
Capri.
won't say anything else.
Yeah, that's the giveaway.
Daddy.
has everyone answered that?
Yeah,
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Should we try a piece of music? And has anyone got a piece of music or not?
yeah.
Okay. Neil, you start with your piece of music.
I've been in America, so and I don't like watching films on the plane. So I've been listening to music, and actually quite controversial. I don't know whether it's controversial. I suppose politically it's controversial. I do love Billy Bragg, and
Okay.
even though I don't love everything that he sings about in that regard, I think he's not modern now, but he writes such a lovely story. He's sort of our John Denver in a way. And there's a song called The Milkman of Human Kindness, which is the first song on Life is a Riot with Spy versus Spy, which is his best album. Every single song on that album is actually really cool. But that's it's quite a deep song, and it's about just being a decent human being. It's really quite good.
Love it. There we go. Let's move on to Manish.
ABBA, ring, ring. Why don't you give me a call?
Why don't you? Yeah. What album was that?
That was on the album ABBA, believe it or not.
That was
No,
the
it
album.
was on the album Waterloo. Sorry, it was on the album Waterloo.
First one. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, ABBA, what amazing.
Actually, Waterloo was actually the second album. The first
Arrival was
album had some very odd stuff on, like Nina Pretty Ballerina, but I can't remember what it was called.
Chris Cooper.
Can I just say before we get music? Last Wednesday we were all at the Autosport Awards in London. This was the global awards for motorsport. One of them is a British award for the young driver, the BRDC Silverstone Young Driver of the Year. Deegan Fairclough won it. The four drivers, we'll put a picture up and put it in the bio about. They were all worthy. Any of them could have won. I'm personally delighted that Deegan won because he was the British F4 Championship, which Motorsport UK promote. He was one of the Motorsport UK academies. So Deegan Fairclough, watch that name, be a megastar. So well done him.
Do you want to quickly just say who won the other end of the award spectrum in terms of age?
Bernie.
Us?
No, Deegan was given young driver of the year, but the lifetime achievement went to the 94-year-old Bernie Ecclestone, which was brilliant because he turned up.
He also he was involved in one of the greatest interviews standoffs I've ever seen in my life.
Oh my God, it was brilliant.
Martin Wendell, concert professional, tried to extract blood from a large piece of rock.
It's on YouTube. You can find it somewhere.
It's absolutely well worth watching. Go and Google it.
So music. Last week, I confessed to a lifelong affection for Belinda Carlisle. I've been listening to more of her stuff, so I'm now on to Runaway Horses, her second album or third album. On Runaway Horses, there is that bombastic tune, "Leave a Light On for Me." In a car, it's brilliant. So I'll deal with it for next week. But
leave a light on for me,
Belinda Carlisle.
in the field.
You spent a long time building up your cool status, and you've just flushed it right down the Swanee in 2 weeks.
I don't care.
I'm going to go. I think Alison Moyet has one of the voices.
Yeah.
And I don't know which one to choose, but I'm going to go for All Cried Out when it's when
brilliant.
she talks that sadness from belly sadness, that is, and she yells that one beautifully.
That's a great song.
Go and stick that on your gramophone.
She was the Adele of her day, really.
Yeah, she was. Yeah.
Arguably stronger.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm taking her over Adele. Sorry, I think she's.
Yeah,
No, they're both great, but she was cool.
She also, for a while, when I was on the old Twitter, Alison Moyet's Twitter account was fantastic. She was just take people down. She's not lacking confidence.
Yeah.
From Neil Clifford, Manish Pandey, and Chris Cooper, and me, Chris Harris, thank you very much for listening. We are trying to remember those that don't watch us on YouTube, and I will be coaching Chris Cooper during the week, who's become a very visual artist in the last few weeks. But we're going to try and make sure that we can let's say, account for all of your needs, whether you're listening to us or watching us. Thank you very much for listening and watching.